Chapter 12, Arya's Garden. The wound was not kept clean enough, the kennel master said flatly. He probed the edges of the wound, and pain blossomed. I tried to lick at the burning in my shoulder, but I couldn't quite get the angle right. I wasn't even sure I wanted to reach the cut, if it tasted as bad as it was beginning to smell. "Are you saying you can't do anything?" Marcus demanded. "Not at all. There's plenty to be done. The question is if I'm the right person to do it, and if this is the place to keep him for the winter," the kennel master said. "It's a lot of money you're offering, but the truth is that your surgeon did a good enough job of stopping the bleeding. Real danger is the wound looks to be going bad. There are medical men who will tell you that the pus is good, of course." "So you think there's no need for special care?" Marcus asked. "Not saying that." The kennel master sucked at his teeth and studied me. "I've seen worse, and there's every chance he's stubborn enough to fight off the infection and recover on his own. But this hound looks like he's been through a lot. If you want him to return to fighting strength, then he'll need special attention. I'm not against taking your money, you understand, but I have many charges as it is. From what I hear, you're not a man to disappoint." "I've already promised that I'll pay whatever you want," Marcus reminded the kennel master. "And I'll take it if you insist. But with as much coin as you're offering, it's clear that this is more than just a battle dog to you. I could keep him in the kennels, and there's a good chance I'd get him right again, but Veritas would give me no peace if I didn't at least inform you that there was a better option." "A better option?" Marcus asked, his brow knitting. I closed my eyes. So many words, and the pain kept thrumming through me. If only I could sleep. The kennel master had no mercy. He kept talking. "I'm loath to admit it, but there's someone who'll do a better job than I can, just outside town. It's only right that I should mention her before accepting your coin." "Her?" Marcus's voice rose in surprise. The kennel master snorted. "Yes, her. The Legion doesn't have the best of everything, you know. You think I have the time to keep a herb garden or exercise just one dog every day? If you want him to run like he once did, it's going to take work." I cracked my eyes in time to see the kennel master look a bit embarrassed. The truth is that when I have a real problem with an animal, I still go to Arya. She's got a bit of a reputation with the locals, but they all used to go to her mother with any problems before the old woman passed away. Arya's filled her mother's mantle well for the last few seasons. "My gratitude for your honesty." Marcus extended a hand, and the kennel master grasped it. "This Arya, she'll not be hard to find, I take it." "Not at all. Big holding just in the hills to the west. Anyone you ask should know the place, but you may hear some stupid things as well." "How so?" Marcus asked. "Arya's got a reputation, like I say. People around these parts are superstitious and fear what they don't understand." The kennel master reached down and ruffled my ears a little bit too roughly. "She's the one to help Ferox, though. A little time spent with her and he should come right. We've got a while before the campaign season. Go see what she says about helping you." Arya's farm stood on the slopes of a low hill, looking out towards the river. The journey there had been painful, but I'd resisted all Marcus's attempts to carry me. I'd spent long enough lying down, and my whole being cried out to be free in that open country. We walked slowly, and as the scents of fat and smoke, hot metal and leather drifted away, I began to revel in the clean air that swept down from the hills, pushing the miasma of the marshes from my head. It reminded me of wild flowers and tall grasses. I remembered the fields outside the farm where I was born and the hills where Marcus had first trained me. It seemed madness that we would ever leave such beauty for all the grisly deprivations of war. The countryside did more for me than any medicine or enforced rest. A lightness returned to my step, and I walked better despite the pain. The sun was high above us in the endless sky, and the day was clear. Shadows were at their shortest, and the wings in the darkness were far away now. "Good to see you're enjoying yourself again." Marcus looked down at me. I looked up and grumbled at him. I didn't want to be hurried. "Oh, I see. Don't want to let on that you're enjoying being out and about, eh?" Marcus mocked. I heard a relief in his voice that mirrored my own. Waves of wheat undulated in the field behind us, and quick birds flitted from high branches. I stiffened at the sight of a squirrel dashing along a nearby branch. "Can't be as bad as I thought if you're already wanting to chase squirrels," Marcus laughed. I snorted and focused on keeping the muscles of my shoulder working. They were tight, and I still didn't trust my foot on the ground for more than a second. It felt strange to have to walk at Marcus's speed rather than be able to range ahead. "Slow down. There's no rush," Marcus said, his tone soft. He looked me up and down. "In fact, let's stop for a bit, eh?" Pain won out, and I came to a halt next to him. We moved off to the side of the road, and I gingerly lowered myself into the dusty grass. Marcus settled himself in a log by the roadside and unbundled our lunch. Since our return, the supply clerks had been a tiny bit more generous with the men who'd come back. As an officer, Marcus could eat for 2, which was good because I had no intention of just watching him. The pork was smoky and good, a rare treat which I ate too fast. Then there was cheese, slightly sharp and still heavy with the musk of goats. I declined the olives, but gnawed at the bread Marcus offered. It had been made on the fire that morning by a legionary who clearly had other things on his mind. Marcus threw out the burnt bits, so I got most of it. We were all but finished lunch, and Marcus was sipping at a flask of Posca when I heard someone moving through the bushes on the other side of the road. "What's that, boy?" Marcus's hand went to his sword hilt. The stirring in the undergrowth continued. Marcus stopped at his flask and got to his feet. "Is there someone there?" he called, addressing whoever was coming towards us. "I've no plans for banditry, if that's your concern," a woman called back. Her voice was light and slightly accented. Marcus's lip quirked, but his voice betrayed none of his humour. "You're alone then, madam?" A chuckle came from the undergrowth. "You've not even seen me and you're interested in my availability?" Marcus's eyes widened. "I think you have misunderstood my intent." "Oh well, if it helps, I have quite an attractive goat with me." A woman with wild hair broke through the undergrowth, leading a small goat. The face beneath the unkempt hair was symmetrical, and the eyes were as dark as the raven strands falling in front of them. Full lips twisted into a grin as she looked my master up and down. "I see that you're not alone either." I sat upright, eyeing the goat. The haughty little creature didn't even have the decency to look away. I let out a bark, and it backed away bleating. "Let's have no more of that, Thistle," the woman said firmly, tugging at the rope about the goat's neck. "She's led me a merry chase all morning." The woman looked about. "Though I've a suspicion as to who might have let her out in the first place." The woman raised her voice as if the statement were meant to be heard beyond the road. The sudden change in her voice, combined with my barking, startled the goat more, and the woman was forced to haul on the goat's rope to maintain her own balance. She looked at me. "Enough of that," she said firmly. Something about her tone made me drop to the ground and look up at her, waiting for permission to rise again. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't be named Arya, would you?" "And why would a soldier be able to guess that?" Arya asked. She examined me a bit closer. "Servius Naso sent you, didn't he?" Marcus nodded. "He said his kennels could not do as much for Ferox as you could." "Ferox, is it?" She tied the goat to a nearby tree branch and approached us. I knew my master was entirely focused on her, though for some reason he kept looking away as if to disguise his interest. She knelt, and I allowed her to probe the edges of the gash in my shoulder. "You're a big one, aren't you?" she murmured, pushing at the stiffened muscles. "Well?" Marcus asked after a bit. "I'm sure that Servius knows enough about dog flesh to see to this. It's a nice gesture, though." She said the last part softly, so Marcus didn't hear it. She rose and looked my master in the eye. "I'm surprised you didn't just take another hound from the kennel." I watched her, watching him, looking for a reaction to her statement. Marcus stiffened. "This is not just some cur to be replaced by any other." He mastered himself quickly. "Ferox is mine. I trained him specifically, and I don't just want a dog, I want him whole again." "There is a limit to what can be done there." She glanced at me. "The eye will never work properly again." Her gaze flicked back to Marcus, and there was some fire in it. "Did your training lead to that?" Marcus made a visible effort to speak calmly. "Can you help him or not?" "Oh, I can help him," Arya said. "The wound must be washed out with vinegar, and then I will apply herbs, fat, and honey. If you want him to walk properly again, that will take a bit more work. We need to make sure the wound doesn't heal badly." "Fear not, much can be done." Marcus's grim face broke into a smile. "I am relieved to hear it." Arya held up a hand. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I have my hands full with the needs of the farm. Most of the workers have gone since the harvest is over, and the last thing I need is to do such a thing gratis. I've got other calls on my time. I can see that you care for this animal, else I wouldn't even consider it. I'm not putting in effort just to have him used to carry a fire pot or thrown back into the fray." Arya regarded Marcus with a strange intensity. Silence hung between them for a while until Marcus spoke. "I've already told you that Ferox is more than a common army dog. Your worry is needless." "That hasn't stopped him going to war," Arya replied. She locked eyes with Marcus, and neither of them blinked for a moment. Then her face softened. "But that's not the point. The fact that you value him means I'm prepared to do the work. But you understand that it will come at a cost?" The muscles around Marcus's cheek twitched. "I'll pay whatever it takes." Arya looked at him thoughtfully, her attention fixed on the fine sword at my master's side. "You look like you'll be good for the coin, but it's not coin I'll be looking for. At least, not just coin." "I don't understand," Marcus said. "What else can I offer?" "This isn't Rome, soldier. I'm no weaponsmith to be given a silver to fix a chipped blade. This is close to the frontiers. We barter." "Meaning?" Meaning you can't just dump your dog with me all winter and expect to come and collect him for the campaign season. It will take so long? Arya paused and her eyes darted for a second. Then she let out a breath and shrugged. The wound will heal in weeks. But for all I know, you'll only think of him again when they call you back to war. She forestalled Marcus's response with a hand. Besides, I intend to work with him after that, to make sure he is correctly conditioned and that the muscles re-knit properly. I can help him do any exercise he needs to do myself once he's better, Marcus protested. You say this work will be a burden to you, yet it appears you are only asking for more bother. See it how you choose, but of the two of us, only I can make sure the wound heals right. Do you want my help or not? Arya returned. I'm not sure I understand what you want, Marcus said. You seem to be saying he has to stay here for the winter. Arya bobbed her head. It will be good for him, and it will suit me for him to do so. Marcus's eyes bored into her. Arya looked more uncomfortable. If you must know, I think that's one of the reasons Servius sent you to me, actually, she blurted. You'll have to explain that. Arya gave him another long look before speaking again. I'm not sure how much I should tell you. Let's just say that winters around here can be hard. She stopped, looking at my master expectantly. Marcus, he supplied. Winters can be hard, Marcus, and I expect this particular winter to bring me trouble. It was strange to hear fear in such a place. I'd seen my share of men mastering their fear in war, but it came as a revelation to realize that this woman might be facing threats of her own, so far from the battlefield. Marcus must also have sensed something. There was a genuine concern in his voice when he asked, what kind of trouble? There's plenty of trouble to choose from. Bandits are not unknown here. Her tone told me that what she said was true, but there was more. Marcus gestured for her to go on, and she continued. A couple of winters back, I had my home invaded. So close to the fort? Marcus asked. Believe it or not, the mere proximity of Roman soldiers doesn't guarantee safety on a cold night, she snapped. I'm sorry to hear you were so troubled, Marcus said, but we still seem to be talking around the truth. She let out a breath and shivered slightly. It is not an easy truth to touch. I lost my mother and my husband when those bandits came calling. Marcus looked taken aback. My apologies, he said. I didn't mean to press you on such an issue. Arya shrugged. I miss my mother, but Flavius was no great loss. He was lazy and he never met a bottle he didn't like. The point is, I need to dissuade anyone who might mean me harm this winter, and it can't hurt for me to have a war dog on the property, and a grim soldier who visits regularly. Marcus's frown deepened. So for all your talk of me putting Ferox at risk, you would happily use us to protect you? She shook her head. I see no danger to you. Who wants to incur the wrath of a soldier? No one balks at threatening a woman on her own, but tangling with a soldier, even his dog, is a different story. It would do much for me and bring little risk to you. Marcus scanned the hill, always presuming I ever found whoever caused the harm. If it is so dangerous out here, I'm just as like to come out here and find Ferox in a worse state than he is now. Arya made to reply, but he cut her off. Leaving that aside, it's still clear you know more than you are telling. Otherwise, why do you seem so sure about the risks, and why does a month or two matter? The bandits will still be in the hills when Ferox and I are gone. He returned her appraising look. What's really going on here? You said Servius sent me and that you were expecting trouble. You're not slow. She paused. That's good, I suppose. She went back to retrieve the goat. Come on, we might as well walk and talk. We started up the trail towards the hill. You're not a superstitious man, are you, Marcus? Arya asked. Not if I can help it. But have you ever met a soldier who didn't own a lucky pair of sandals? Marcus winked. Where are yours then? Arya laughed. She looked down. Those sandals barely look worn in. I left one of them in a bog on the other side of the Rhine. Its counterpart came back missing a strap. Marcus looked down at his feet. I suppose you could call these my new lucky sandals. Do they work? Marcus thought for a moment. I haven't got any blisters yet. Arya laughed. You don't sound like the sort to run if I tell my story. I've stood firm against worse than stories. Men can be funny. Many will happily face something sword in hand, but tell them of something they can't engage with steel. I suppose I'm only making it worse by circling the issue. She bit her lip and gave a small nod. Yes, as you surmised, I do have a specific worry at the moment, and I think your presence could help to solve it. Marcus nodded. You said someone had let your goat out. Is that something to do with it? It's about more than one goat, I'm afraid. You're talking in riddles again, Marcus said. Sorry, it's just hard to tell the story the right way. You see, the bandits killed my mother, but they didn't kill my husband. She stalled again, clearly reluctant to say more. But I thought you said your husband died when the bandits came. He died that night, yes. But it wasn't them that killed him. I did. Arya's shoulders slumped a little as if she had just set down a weight. She kept walking, though. Marcus came to a sudden halt and stared at her. What? Arya stopped and sighed. I'm not trying to shock you, but you need to know what happened. I'm sure one of the other freeholders around here will tell you the story soon enough. She let out a breath, and an emotion I couldn't fathom passed across her face. I didn't want to hurt him. I just couldn't stop it happening. What happened? Marcus asked, still staring at her. The men came with a lame horse. Arya started walking again. There was a strained note in her voice, and Marcus and I hurried to catch up. My mother was known for her skills with animals, so that was their excuse for coming. When my mother told them there was no helping the animal, they got threatening. They said they would take our horse, and she tried to stand in their way. Arya stopped talking. They killed her, Marcus supplied. She died in the end, but I'm not sure they meant to kill her. Arya choked back a tear. They beat her about the head and used her. We came out when we heard the cries. My husband was no soldier. He would have run then and there, if one of them hadn't threatened us with a bow. I whined, and I could sense that Arya was uncomfortable, and Marcus had that tension about him that told me he was working hard to restrain whatever he was feeling. You owe me no explanations, Arya. I didn't come to judge you. It's all right. I want you to understand the problem. We were nearing the gate around her property. My nose twitched at the scent of a farm. It had been a long time, but at that moment it seemed that I had never left the barn where I was born. I certainly wasn't feeling any stronger or more certain than I had as a pup. The old smells took me back to a time when I had known no pain, a time when I had yet to discover the truth of places beyond tamed woods and open fields. Amidst the familiar sense of rural life, there was also the sharp tang of the herb beds. Even at a distance, the pungent leaves made my nose itch and quiver. Arya was still talking. It was a winter's night, so they decided to stay and wait out the storm. They let Flavius carry my mother inside, but one look at her told me she would not likely make it to the morning. It was clear I was next, and that Flavius would do nothing to stop them. Her voice broke. They called for wine. Marcus's eyes lit with a terrible understanding. And you brought them more than they bargained for, he said softly. Arya nodded. I tried to signal Flavius not to drink, but what could I do? We'd likely both be dead if they guessed that the wine was poisoned. She opened the gate and let us in. Marcus stood next to me as she closed the gate and looked down the lane. A terrible thing to have to endure, I'm sure, but what does this have to do with your current problems? She turned to face him. The people in these parts see herbs and magic as much the same thing. They found me with a house full of dead people, and it wasn't long before they were whispering that I had used witchcraft. Marcus glanced around the farmyard. That would have died down by now, I would have thought. It got better for a bit, though these rumours never truly die once they stick to a person. All it took was for Althric's goats to die. Althric? One of my neighbours. He didn't come to me till it was too late because of his superstitions. Then, when I couldn't save his animals, he claimed I'd cursed them. I wouldn't pay him compensation, so things have become... She paused for a breath. Tense. And that's where I come in? Marcus asked. Yes, Althric has a big family, and they've been causing all sorts of mischief ever since. I refused to give them the money they demanded. Couldn't. So far it's not been much more than whispers against me and minor nuisances, but I feel their resentment building, and bad weather won't help. The migrant workers are gone now, and they know I will be vulnerable this winter. Her cheek reddened slightly. Once the harvest work dries up, not many want to share a roof with a witch. With the snow comes desperation, Marcus observed. Althric may well see an opportunity. Exactly. Who knows what they might do when the loss of their animals really starts to bite deep. I want things to die down. If they see you about and hear a few barks from Ferox here, it might make them see some sense. She looked hopeful at the prospect. I wouldn't expect him to bark much, not unless he knows you've seen the enemy too. Marcus ran a hand over my head. Then you can't get him to shut up. I raised my head, panting a little too hard. The journey was beginning to catch up with me. He's in pain from the climb, Arya said. I'll take him in and we can see about cleaning his wound. They led me through, past the garden, and my tail started to bob unconsciously. Old memories bubbled up past the pain and exhaustion. Times before the pit and the battlefield. A clarity beyond the flickering light and dark and the flapping of wings. Arya led me inside, and she let me lie in front of the hearth. Something Gracia would never have done. Bronze and clay pots were set on shelves, and blackened pots bubbled in the fire. I had not been in this place before, yet somehow I felt at home. Marcus took a seat not far away and stroked my flank as she cleaned my wound. There was pain at first, stinging as the vinegar found its way beneath the scar, pressure as she rubbed the edges of the cut. None of it mattered. The fire was warm, the air was clean, and I could sleep, as I would never sleep in camp or on the march. Marcus was above me somewhere in the warm darkness. "It seems Ferox is content to guard your hearth this winter," he murmured. I heard Arya laugh, and I felt she hadn't laughed that way for a long time, perhaps as long as it felt since I had truly slept.